Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to dive into the hidden economics of one of the absolute most profitable yet quietest sectors in all of America. You know, when we think of the energy industry, our minds usually jump straight to the loud stuff, right? We picture those massive offshore drilling platforms, towering refineries, or giant oil rigs out in West Texas. We see the big, highly visible parts of the energy process. But today, we're focusing on the midstream sector. It's a business that operates almost entirely out of sight. We are talking about a hidden, high-capacity transit network that controls trillions of dollars in assets. It powers our homes, our factories, our airports, and entire cities, generating absolutely staggering revenue right beneath our feet, all without most people ever even realizing it exists. So let's kick this off with a bit of a mystery. What would you say is the smartest energy investment out there? Specifically, one that doesn't own a single gas station, doesn't drill for a single drop of oil, and doesn't refine any gasoline whatsoever. Yet somehow, this sector makes massive amounts of money whether global oil prices are completely crashing or soaring to record highs. Think back to 2020 for a second. Crude oil prices briefly went negative. It was wild, and producers were absolutely panicking. But these specific operators, they were insulated. They completely defy the boom and bust cycle that we so heavily associate with global energy, operating with a level of financial stability that exploration companies can honestly only dream of. The answer to the mystery is America's Invisible Highway. We are talking about a vast subterranean network made up of millions of miles of steel pipelines buried deep underground. Every single second of every single day, thousands and thousands of gallons of crude oil, natural gas, diesel, and jet fuel are rushing through this infrastructure. They're moving millions of barrels across the country right now while we speak. You've probably driven over them a dozen times this week without ever noticing they're there. But here's the reality. Without them, our entire economy would just grind to an absolute halt. Gas stations would run dry, airports wouldn't be able to refuel planes, and factories would simply stop producing. It is literally the circulatory system of our modern industrial economy. When you really compare our logistical options for moving all this fuel, the advantages of this invisible system become overwhelmingly clear. Just imagine, for a second, if we had to move all those millions of barrels of oil using only trucks. The highways would be completely gridlocked, traffic would be an absolute nightmare, and fuel costs would skyrocket, mainly because trucking is slow, dangerous, and incredibly dependent on the weather. Even trains, which can obviously carry way more volume, are still limited by track capacity, rigid schedules, and surface storms. Pipelines, on the other hand, they never hit a traffic jam. They never stop for rush hour, they really don't care if there's a massive blizzard on the surface, and they never, ever have to wait at a red light. And that brings us to their ultimate operational advantage, 24. As in operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, entirely unbothered by whatever's happening up on the surface. Inside these steel tubes, powerful pumping stations use advanced SCADA systems, that stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, along with complex telemetry to keep the product flowing continuously, day and night, with barely any human intervention. And the scale of this is just mind-blowing. Some of these individual pipelines stretch continuously for distances farther than a drive from New York City all the way down to Miami. It is simply the safest, most efficient, and most economically viable way to transport massive volumes of highly pressurized energy across an entire continent. Now here is where their business model gets really genius. It's often compared to a toll road, or better yet, the FedEx and UPS of midstream logistics. See, pipeline companies generally do not actually own the commodity that's flowing inside their infrastructure. Just like FedEx doesn't manufacture the stuff inside the cardboard boxes they leave at your front door, pipeline companies don't own the liquid they move. By doing this, they completely separate the commodity risk from the transportation infrastructure. They own something far more lucrative, the logistics network itself. They simply transport the package safely from the producer to the refinery, and every single shipment generates highly predictable, heavily contracted income. To understand exactly how that income rolls in, we need to talk about the transportation tariff. It functions exactly like a toll highway. If you own a toll road, every single car that drives across your pavement pays a small fee. As long as traffic keeps moving, you keep getting paid, right? Well, in the midstream sector, pipeline companies charge oil producers this transportation tariff to move their crude. Every single barrel that enters that pipe pays the toll. And crucially, these are very often structured as what they call take-or-pay contracts. That means the oil producer has to pay for the pipeline capacity they reserved, whether they actually end up moving the oil through it or not. This creates a really fascinating economic irony in the energy sector. Upstream oil producers are completely at the mercy of volatile geopolitical markets. If the price of a barrel of oil suddenly plummets, those producers can lose billions of dollars in an absolute panic. But midstream pipeline companies, they care about volume, not price. Because of those fee-based models and take-or-pay contracts we just talked about, they're effectively insulated from all that crazy price volatility. As long as the oil keeps flowing through the pipe, they just quietly sit back and collect their tool fees. They make money if oil is dirt cheap, and they make money if oil is ridiculously expensive. But they don't just do this on a day-to-day whim. To lock in this incredible stability, pipeline operators sign massive, long-term agreements with producers that can last for 10, 15, or even up to 20 years. For the oil producer, securing this guaranteed offtake capacity is absolutely critical, mostly because they need to prove they have it to secure big bank loans for their drilling operations. But for the pipeline operator, it means 2 decades of guaranteed, highly predictable cash flow. Once that infrastructure is down in the dirt and operating, it generates reliable, compounding income for an entire generation, totally smoothing out the boom and bust cycles that constantly plague the rest of the industry. Okay, sounds like a pretty sweet deal, right? Well, hold on, because locking in a generation of wealth comes with a massive billion-dollar catch. The barrier to entry is just astronomically high. Before a single drop of oil ever flows, and before they generate a single penny of revenue, these companies have to spend billions of dollars in upfront capital. They have to secure complex land rights across multiple states, which often means grueling, years-long legal battles over eminent domain. They have to obtain literally thousands of permits, hire armies of engineers, buy millions of tons of heavy steel, and build massive pumping stations. The construction phase alone can take years of just pouring capital into the dirt. It tests the financial endurance of even the largest corporations on Earth. Once a project is finally built, protecting that massive investment becomes the #1 priority. To prevent catastrophic leaks, companies rely on incredibly advanced monitoring tools that the industry affectionately calls smart pigs. These are highly sophisticated inspection devices that physically travel inside the pipelines, swimming right along with the highly pressurized oil. Rather than just relying on visual inspections from the outside, smart pigs use advanced diagnostics like magnetic flux leakage and ultrasonic testing to scan the steel from the inside out. They run around the clock, constantly searching for microscopic anomalies, early signs of corrosion, or any weak spots. Finding a structural problem early is vital because a breach is quite literally their absolute worst-case scenario. And despite all of that high-tech maintenance, the environmental and regulatory risks are just monumental. A single leak can cause devastating damage to local ecosystems and communities, leading to multi-million-dollar cleanups and incredibly severe environmental fines. So maintaining structural integrity isn't just some best practice in this business. It is a strict, undeniable financial imperative. Beyond the physical risks, these companies face intense regulatory hurdles. Building a new pipeline means navigating years of complex reviews by government agencies like FERC and PHMSA. You could spend billions of dollars only to have the project delayed for years or totally canceled by legal hurdles at the very last minute. Considering those immense risks and keeping in mind the massive global shift toward electric vehicles and renewable energy that dominates the news cycle every single day, you might logically wonder about the future here. If the world transitions away from combustion engines over the next few decades, is this vast underground empire destined to just become a stranded asset? Are pipelines simply going to disappear? Well, the short answer is probably not anytime soon. You see, our modern economy's dependency on petroleum stretches far, far beyond just the gasoline that goes into passenger cars. Think about global logistics for a second. Commercial aviation absolutely requires jet fuel to fly, and massive cargo ships rely entirely on bunker fuel to cross the oceans. Heavy construction equipment needs diesel. And even beyond combustion, thousands of everyday products, from the advanced plastics we use daily to incredibly crucial medical supplies, all depend on the hydrocarbons that are transported through these exact midstream systems. The green transition is definitely happening, but the baseline demand for these chemical building blocks remains incredibly resilient. But looking ahead, what's truly fascinating is how the most forward-thinking pipeline operators are already investing heavily to adapt. They aren't just sitting still waiting for the energy grid to change around them, they're actively evolving their infrastructure. Midstream companies are taking these vast networks and upgrading them for the future. They're exploring the engineering marvels of retrofitting existing natural gas lines to safely transport hydrogen, the moving renewable biofuels. They're even developing massive carbon capture projects that require supercritical CO2 to be moved safely back underground. The infrastructure itself remains a vital economic moat. It's really just the molecules inside the pipes that are going to evolve. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really fascinating economic takeaway to chew on the next time you drive past a gas station. If you had billions of dollars to invest, would you rather own the volatile product that violently fluctuates in value based on global geopolitics? Or would you rather own the invisible, highly regulated system that the entire world absolutely must use to move it? The hidden economics of the midstream business teach us a profound lesson about scale and infrastructure. As we transition into a new energy grid of renewables, hydrogen, and carbon capture, maybe the ultimate question isn't just who will produce this new energy, but who is quietly buying up the invisible highways of tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible systems that power our world.